What's the one secret you will take to the grave but you don't mind telling on the internet? My wife surprised me with a trip to Vegas for my 30th. She was working as a nurse during COVID and came home after a long shift and let it slip about Vegas, but she didn't even realize what she said and just kept talking. She asked me later on if I had any idea we were going to Vegas for my birthday, but it would break her heart if I told her she let it slip. She was so happy and proud of herself keeping it a secret for so long. She's seriously the best and has a heart of gold, and I see no reason to tell her this. This is not at all where I thought this confession was going, and I'm so happy for that twist. Story 2. In the late 90s, my father's older brother / my uncle was terminally ill with cancer in his mid-70s and expected to live up to another 12 months. He had no quality of life, was in and out of the hospital, heavily medicated, frail, and unable to manage basic personal care alone. My aunt was distraught but wanted to keep him alive as long as possible, regardless of his condition. A doctor took my father aside and said he was willing to increase my uncle's medication. The increase would not be recorded on his chart. According to my dad, the doctor just called it an unofficial act of mercy. My father, who didn't have power of attorney, agreed, and my uncle passed peacefully that day. My father told me over a quiet drink a few weeks after the funeral. He said he felt that doctor offered an incredible kindness that not everyone would understand, and I understood this meant to keep it between us. My father passed a decade later. He and I never spoke of it again, and I've never told anyone. I think this kind of thing happened a lot back in the day. Maybe still does. Maybe it was easier back then to have things go unrecorded / unnoticed. I don't know. I fully believe my father did this out of love for his brother, and it makes me very proud of how much courage he needed to do that. Story 3. I was 15 in a time before mobile phones. My grandmother was dying, and my grandfather sat at her side for 2 days, refusing to leave her side, sleeping in a rubbish armchair. We brought food in for him. My parents tried to comfort him. Every now and again, he would need the toilet, and bless him, would make us all leave the room and use a potty. On the third day, I was alone with the two of them, and he told me he needed to leave to have a shower and take fresh air. It took him hours to make the decision to leave. About 15 minutes before he returned, my grandmother passed away in front of me. It was quiet, it was peaceful, it was devastating. I didn't tell any nurses nor any doctors. I was in shock. I saw suffering, then a last breath and a visit from heaven within seconds of each other. He returned and sat down. I left to go for a walk and try to cope with what happened. When I returned, he told me that he said his goodbyes and held her hand while she passed away. Grandpa passed away 11 years later, believing he held her hand and was there until the very end. I haven't told another human soul that story, and I still believe I did the right thing. Story 4. When my son was first born, I called my public health office to put him up for adoption. He was 5 days old. He was a very much planned and wanted baby, and I had every means to take care of him. Unbeknownst to me, it was the beginning of a battle with postpartum OCD, and I hadn't slept more than a couple of hours for those 5 days, to the point I was hallucinating. Only 5 days in, and I couldn't take it anymore. The public health nurse came to my home immediately. She put my baby to sleep in his bassinet, then sat with me for hours at my kitchen table as I wailed to her everything I was afraid of. Thankfully, she knew I didn't want to put my baby up for adoption. I just needed help. She referred me to emergency therapy, a program made just for postpartum mothers. My son is 2.5 years old today, and thinking about that day still makes me physically sick. I love him more than anything, and he lives an amazing life with a now healthy and happy mom. Thank God for that nurse. Story 5. In high school, during a school trip, me and some buddies let me smoke with them for the first time. I wanted to try it. 20 minutes later, the chaperones came to check on us and immediately noticed it, so we all got punished during the trip. After we got back to school the next week, we all met with the principal and SRO one by one. My buddies all vouched for me, saying I did not partake, so I avoided expulsion. To this day, my family still doesn't know what happened. Only my brother and my friends know. Story 6. I found myself thrust into a management role and turned out to be pretty damn good at most of it, including getting people to want to do good work for me. But I learned everything I know about managing people from a dog training book. I read it as a child, and it didn't occur to me that I was using it until after that job had ended. It's not a terrible thing. The book advocated respect, praise, and the absence of punishment, which lines up pretty close with modern best practices for management, but I still can never tell anyone about it. Story 7. Not that crazy, but my college roommate, Roomie 1, decided to up and break our lease to move in with his girlfriend, who he cheated on weekly. I had a TV in my room from a previous roommate, Roomie 2, who Roomie 1 became buddies with. The day Roomie 1 moved out, he came to collect the TV on the grounds that since it was technically Roomie 2's TV, and he was now best buds with Roomie 2, more of a lapdog really, he was taking the TV. I probably should have resisted more than I did because it was BS, but I was already wrapped up in trying to find a new place to live since I wouldn't be able to afford to stay in the apartment by myself. After Roomie 1 left, I went to the apartment complex office and told them we had to break the lease And they were actually really cool about it. They even gave us, well, me, our entire deposit back. When roomie 1 asked me about the deposit, I told him we lost it due to breaking our lease early and he just accepted it. So he got to keep that old TV and I got $600, which was huge for a broke college student. I debated telling him years later, not out of guilt, but really to gloat and rub it in his face for being such a schmuck about the TV. But roomie 1 was definitely the type of person to make a big stink over it and demand the money back, probably plus interest. But even now, I still really want to gloat about it to him, freaking schmuck. Story 8. About 9 years ago, I was merging into traffic during morning rush hour in St. Louis. I made a blueberry Eggo waffle for breakfast and it slid off my lap onto my shoes while I was merging. I panicked and didn't know what to do with it, so I cracked the window and intended to just drop it, thinking it would fall directly onto the pavement. Nope. The wind caught it and blew it directly onto the windshield of the car behind me while we were going 70 miles an hour. They honked and flipped me off. I felt guilty about that rogue waffle for almost a decade. If you're the person who got hit with my blueberry Eggo, I am so sorry. Story 9. My wife was born with an organic memory issue. Her short-term memory doesn't work as well as most people. I've noticed it's gotten worse the last 2 years. It could be the early onset of Alzheimer's, but it's too early to tell for sure or do tests, but she has one coming up in a few months. She knows she has a memory problem and is extremely sensitive about it. She has this uncanny ability to fill in or cover over gaps in her memory. There's nothing that can be done. I just accept it. It's harder than it sounds. It can be incredibly frustrating, and everyone, including her family, corrects her. I don't. I am a better person as a result. I think I have greater empathy for her, and in general, it's kind of this shift in attitude from being mad, frustrated, and patronizing to trying to see the world from her eyes and the struggle she must go through. I don't say these things out loud, of course, so I mentioned it here. I love her more than ever. Story 10. I found my dad's Derringer pistol while looking for Xmas presents in my parents' room. I don't know why, but I picked it up, held it to my temple, and was going to pull the trigger. Knowing that it wasn't loaded, of course, I was just going to make a bang sound and pretend I passed away. No idea why. At the last moment, I guess my caution got the better of me and I pulled it away from my head and angled it up. I pulled the trigger. It frickin' went off and went through the wall. I instantly felt sick to my stomach. I opened the windows to get the smell out. I folded over the plaster so the hole was barely noticeable. And I got another bullet out and reloaded the one I just shot. They never noticed the hole. Nobody ever said a word about it. My parents would have thought I ended myself in their room. I was a happy kid at that time. They would have thought that they did something wrong and I was sending some kind of message. Nope, just a dumb kid doing dumb kid stuff. Story 11. My husband loves to get 16 by 20 canvas prints of our son and hang them up in the house. He is such a proud papa, which is why I will never tell him how tacky I think they are. I detest canvas prints and prefer framed pictures. Plus, it's weird that they aren't family pictures, just solo pictures of my son hanging up. The only other picture we have up in our house is a framed photo of our wedding. 1 or 2 would be okay, but our son isn't 3 yet, and we already have more than 8 canvas prints of him around the house. But again, I am not going to dampen my husband's spirit. He is so cute with how happy he is with every new, gigantic, garish tribute to our son. Multiple times a week, he looks around at all those pictures and sighs in pure happiness. I also dislike the blanket that has a picture collage of our son on it that he got me for Mother's Day. I love our son more than my life and would sell my soul to the devil if it would guarantee my kid had a happy, healthy future. I just would rather have received the knife sharpening kit I have been talking about for months and sent him the Amazon link to. I do feel guilty about it. All of my married friends talk about how much they wish their husbands would do half of what my husband does. It's just not my thing. Story 12. We kids, 1980s, early 90s, always rode our bikes around the neighborhood together. But when the streetlights came on, we would have to separate and head home. There was this loner kid named Chris. Schmuck was the neighborhood Pennywise I now see. He was vicious, and his parents let the kid just run wild in the streets like a rabid Cujo. We were collectively of ages 12 to 14. This Chris was 15. He would wait for one of us to ride by alone. He would run out of the woods, knock us off our bike, and beat us with sticks, feet, or whatever. Sometimes he would drag us into the woods and just be awful. We would fight back, but not all kids knew how to fight, and the element of surprise gave Chris the advantage as falling to the pavement can stun you for a second. His little brother Mikey, about 10 years old with a blue bike better than any of us had, would ride over and spit on us while the injured party was laying on the ground. Well, one night, the neighborhood friend showed up at my door and said we had to go to the woods. I told my mom one of the kids got Castlevania or something and that we couldn't wait until tomorrow to play it. Off we went. Parents didn't want me in the house anyway when Dallas or Doctor Who were on anyway. When we got deep into the woods to where we were going, lo and behold, there was Mikey's shiny blue bike. Like Hyman Roth, I didn't ask who took it or how it got there, but it was like finding Billy Bats in the trunk. It was game time. We all grabbed whatever sticks, rocks, and boulders we could find. We all went nuts on that bike. We unleashed pent-up hate on that bike until it was in pieces. Once we started, we just couldn't stop. I think a few of us accidentally hit one another in the process, but it didn't matter. Some kids took keepsakes. We ultimately tossed a bent and dented frame into a nearby pond. Mikey's bike was no more, and he never had the means to ride up and spit on us again. We never spoke of it, but we always smiled when someone in school or class mentioned playing Castlevania. Screw you, Chris. Screw you, Mikey. Story 13. When I was in 6th grade, we had a class project researching how American Indians lived hundreds of years ago. On the last day of school, we had a potluck in our classroom. We were all supposed to bring something that was part of the Indians' diet. It seemed like most of my fellow students brought venison or various types of jerky. My family was considerably poorer than any of my classmates, so my mom sent me to school with some 30 or so baked potatoes. No one ate any. In fact, a few of the kids made fun of me for bringing them. When class was over, the teacher gave me the potatoes back and told me to thank my mom. On the walk home from school, I suddenly felt sorry for my mom and hated the idea of telling her nobody wanted them. So before I got to our house, I threw them away in a field. I told my mom that her potatoes were a hit and they were all eaten. She seemed so happy to hear it that I never had the heart to tell her the truth. She passed away several years ago, so she passed away thinking her potatoes were a smash hit in my 6th grade class many moons ago. Those punks, free baked potatoes, come on, that's like the perfect carb combination. Story 14. We were playing with the Ouija board in high school. I knew everyone's secrets via the grapevine, little details they'd let slip. Nothing dark or sinister, but little things like how they snuck out of class, talked to an army recruiter behind their parents' back, secretly hated another mutual friend who wasn't there and only ate the red M&Ms. Silly things like that they really thought they were good at, well, keeping a secret. Anyway, I had them convinced we accidentally summoned a demon and it was telling them things no one else could possibly know. I included some stuff about myself, too, to throw them off. A couple are convinced Ouija boards are portals to the spirit realm. Others know one of us did it, but don't know who. I'll never tell them it was me. Story 15. I full-on crapped my pants in kindergarten. Huge log, just chilling in my tighty-whities. I basically switched back and forth to each cheek the rest of the day, all the way through lunch, the second half of the school day, and the entire bus ride home. Either I was incredibly lucky that it didn't stink, or no one bothered to say anything. I don't know which is worse. Got home, dumped the crap in the toilet, cleaned myself, then put the garments in a Walmart bag and threw it in the dumpster in the back alley behind her house. My mom had just started working again, so my older brother was, quote, babysitting, aka ignoring the heck out of me and my twin. I don't think I would have gotten away with it if she was still home. I don't know why I didn't just tell my teacher, but that literal crap is going with me to the frickin' grave. I ain't telling nobody. Story 16. When I was 8, my family was camping. Everyone else was at the beach beside our site, and I was in the tent trailer reading comics in my swimsuit when my stomach suddenly dropped. I knew instantly that I had about 3 seconds before the disaster. I sprinted to the washroom without telling anyone and started pooping before I even made it inside. By the time I yanked my swimsuit down, liquid lava went everywhere. The toilet, the floor, my legs, it was a full meltdown. Thankfully, these showers were in the same building. No one was around, so I jumped in and started washing myself and my swimsuit with the sad little hand soap dispenser. I left the stall looking like a crime scene but walked back to camp mostly dry thanks to the heat. Laid on a beach chair afterward like I'd survived a natural disaster. A few hours later, after supper, my mom took us back to the washroom to get ready for bed, and the mess was still there. My siblings were laughing and roasting whoever blew up the bathroom, and my mom scolded them, saying it was probably a handicapped person and that they should be ashamed. I've never told a soul. I will never tell my family. Thank you, Reddit, for letting me finally confess. Story 17. When I first became a public school teacher, I came from a PhD program. My principal and superintendent thought that meant I would have influence over the other employees. They brought me into a secret meeting with 2 other employees who were lead teachers. They told us we had to vote Republican. It was crucial we voted Republican in order to save public education. We were told to influence the other teachers and convince them to vote Republican. I didn't play ball. The principal tried to let me go and searched for every reason to, but I kept such a spotless record she had nothing. They transferred me to a different campus in the same district where I won the Teacher of the Year award, and my previous principal had to stand in the front row and watch me and congratulate me on receiving the award. This was in the Texas education system. Story 18. At a time in my life, the only time I felt the world quiet was when I stuck a pistol to my temple. It started out wanting to know what people who did commit felt before they passed. I started with the pistol empty, Then when the calming effect went away, I put the magazine in. Then when the feelings subsided again, I racked around but left the safety on. Then I started emptying the gun and dry firing on my temple. I then moved to racking around, turning the safety off but with my finger off the trigger. Then I started putting my finger on the trigger, and after that I started pushing down the safety lever on the trigger and applying a small amount of force. I did stop, and I am not much happier now, but I think about the consequences to my family more. Sadly, to this day, I think those moments were the most relaxed and calm I have ever felt, a twitch away from utter peace and silence. Sometimes when I'm really upset or overwhelmed, I think of those moments and long for the momentary silence and control. All that being said, if anything I said appeals to you, please seek therapy, not a haphazard mirage of fleeting control. Story 19. I first started drinking coffee in my late teens when I worked at a grocery store. The coffee station at the store always had a paper towel down on the counter under it to catch any spills. I drank coffee a few times at home, but one morning out of habit, I put some paper towels down to catch any spills. My mom watched me and told me it was a waste of paper towels. Why am I doing that? I just shrugged and kept going about with it. She goes in for her second cup of coffee and her mug cracks on the counter. All the coffee spills out, but it's mostly caught by the paper towel I put down. She yells to me, says, "Why did you put that paper towel down? Did you know that was going to happen? That would have been a big mess if you didn't do that. What made you do that?" To this day, I've never told her why. She still thinks I had a moment of clairvoyance. She'll tell that story when people talk about weird stuff that has happened to them. I'll never tell her what really happened. And if you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 20. Whenever I am at my husband's parents' house and they are literally anywhere else, I clean. They are clean people, very tidy, but they cannot wash dishes and are often getting themselves and others sick from expired or poorly stored food. I throw things out. 90% of their massive walk-in pantry is expired, and I don't mean canned goods. UHT milk, bottles of sauce, taco shells that have been opened, poorly rewrapped, and are visibly moldy. I know they suspected me 10 plus years ago, so now I only do it when the rest of the family is around. I once threw out their 5-year expired weird-tasting peanut butter, got caught doing it, and my husband took the fall, happily engaging with his mother by saying, "Just smells it smells off." I also threw out their disgusting sponges and chucks and rewashed their oily freaking dishes. Husband knows and covers for me. I love him. Story 21. A few years ago, my wife and I were really struggling in our marriage. We took a trip to Ireland, and in the middle of all the tension, we had this one small moment that reminded us that we still loved each other. During that trip, I bought her a bracelet made of sterling silver with rose gold Celtic knots and clovers. It was around $200, not crazy expensive, but definitely not cheap. She wore it all the time, and I think she loved it because it symbolized that little bright spot during a rough time in our lives. After we got back, we went to marriage counseling, worked on ourselves, and a few years later, we're better than we've ever been. But last year, she lost a bracelet while walking around the mall, we think. The clasp was a little loose, so who knows. She was devastated. She tore the house apart, checked her jacket pockets 100 times, but nothing. Earlier this year, I was clearing out some emails and saw a marketing ad from the shop in Ireland where we bought it. I decided to see if they still had the same bracelet, and they did. I bought it, tucked it into the pocket of her winter coat, and let it sit there for 6 months. A few weeks ago, the weather got cooler. She put on that jacket, stuck her hands in the pockets, and found the bracelet. Guys, the look on her face, the absolute joy was 100% worth every penny of buying it again. Sure, I could tell her the truth and she'd probably think it was sweet, but she was so upset and mad at herself for losing it, and seeing her light up like that felt so good. I just don't want her to feel bad about losing it, so I think I'm going to keep this one as my little secret. Story 22. When I was 17, I was on a camping trip with my dad in Canada, like 70 miles from the nearest city on an island in the middle of a river. I asked him if I could take the canoe out to fish around sunset. He said it was too dark, current is too strong, not a good idea. I went anyway. And he was right about everything. The outboard wouldn't start when it was time to come back, and I wasn't strong enough to paddle upriver. So I took the boat and pulled it up on a beach where I would be real visible and waited. It got real dark. That's when I knew he wasn't going to bail me out this time. I flipped the boat over and slept under it that night. At dawn, I heard a boat out in the water. He came to get my dumb butt with the other guys we were out there with. I hope you learned your lesson. Now neither of us says a word to Mom or she'll end us both. Got it? You're damn right, Dad. Story 23. When I was young, we went on a field trip to the zoo. We got the usual tour and saw the usual animals, giraffes, rhinos, monkeys, etc. But the highlight was the lions, and they saved them for last. When we got to the lion enclosure, they put on a big show and even got the male lion to roar. It was the highlight of the trip. After the lion show, we were allowed to wander the zoo and revisit any animals we wanted to. A group of kids, including the school bully, wanted to go see the lions again. They invited me and I declined because I wanted to feed the giraffes again. The school bully teased me and called me a wimp for being afraid of the lions. I told him I wasn't afraid, but he wouldn't let up, so I went with the group to see the lions again. When we got there, the lions were snoozing. The bully began looking for rocks and sticks to throw at them. We found a few small stones and started throwing them in. I told him to knock it off, but instead he threw a rock at me and called me a chicken. Just then, I spotted a good-sized rock right inside the outer barrier of the lion enclosure. I tried to grab it but couldn't reach it. The bully saw me grabbing at it and pushed me aside so he could get it. When he leaned over the barrier, I grabbed his legs and threw him in. He screamed as he went over the barrier, and then I heard a thud. The lions quickly came over to examine the intruder. He landed in the enclosure, but there was a moat between him and the lions. He screamed as the lions approached. Just then, a zookeeper ran into the enclosure with a large stick to scare the lions away and rescue the bully. He suffered minor injuries but didn't accuse me of anything. I believe he suspected me, as did many others at the school. I am now a grown man. I was never bullied again. Story 24. My dad passed away unexpectedly from a, quote, heart attack many moons ago. The only ones home were my mom on the other side of the house, and my brother. All of us siblings were adults. He was in the next room when it happened and heard everything through the thin wall. I'd been a nurse, also certified as an EMT, and was a medic in the military, the only medical professional in the family. I'd been given the impression our dad had an infarction, but what my brother described was an arrhythmia. He didn't understand what he was hearing, didn't know our dad was in trouble, and by the time he went into that room, it was too late. I never told him or anyone that if he had gone in sooner, he might have saved our dad. There are no guarantees in such situations and no point in Monday morning quarterbacking the event. Dad was gone and not coming back, but when I saw pictures of him for a long time after, I wondered if he would still have been with us, if only. Story 25. When I was in my early 20s, I got a kitten. I told people I found him in a trash can and rescued him, specifically my roommate at the time and my family who wouldn't have been too happy with me taking on a cat. But really, a girl I went to high school with had found him in a trash can inside the woman's restroom of a Target. She posted about him on Facebook and said she couldn't keep him because of her own cats. I didn't have a car at the time, so I asked a friend to drive me to her and I got the kitten from her. He was my soul cat, and he may have been saved at that time, but he saved me over and over again. Many times I didn't want to be around anymore and stayed because I couldn't leave him. He got sick last year and passed, and I still miss him more than I could even put in words. I love him so much. He took a piece of me with him when he left, and I'll never be whole again. In a funny turn of events, I now have another kitten who I really did find in a trash can and rescue, who was the same coloring as my sweet boy. Story 26. My mom's best friend was having an affair for years, and she and the guy planned to both leave their partners on the same day. My mom's friend had saved up some money. On the chosen day, she packed all of her stuff, wrote a long letter to her husband, and left while he was at work. The other guy backed out and told her he wasn't going to leave his wife after all. She quickly turned around, headed home, destroyed the letter, and unpacked all of her things before her husband came home from work. He never found out the truth. My mom, her friend, and the husband have all passed away now. I'm still good friends with all their kids, but of course, I keep this secret for their mom. Story 27. My friend cheated on her husband, another close friend. She got intoxicated and told my wife and I on a camping trip, and unfortunately, we are friends with both. Her husband and I were in a band, and I unconsciously started distancing myself from him until we split up. I think she started pushing my wife and I out because of guilt. I try to hold those relationships together, but the dynamic shifted so much after that. He was a great friend though, and I ended up losing that entire social circle when they inevitably asked me not to be in the friend group anymore. She was better friends with my wife and I didn't want to get involved, so I didn't say anything, but I do wish I had told him. I promised her I wouldn't say anything, and it felt like now I'd be betraying someone no matter what I did. I didn't want to be a part of another couple's marriage issues, and it seemed like there weren't any good decisions there, so I just shut up and backed away. Vent over, there's my secret. It still makes me angry and I hate that it went this way. Story 28. I resented my parents for years after they let my cat out and she disappeared, most likely ran over on the nearby busy road. I was always worried for her whenever she got out, even though she only did so to sunbathe on the neighbor's roof, because she was an anxious little thing who froze in place when scared. The one time she went further than usual, she never came back. She was my cat more than theirs. I was the one to pick her among all the other, more well-adjusted kittens of the shelter, the one who spent hours with her to teach her she could trust us, the only one whose lap she trusted enough to sleep on. When she disappeared, a bit of myself went with her. I was heartbroken, destroyed, and so angry. I loved my parents, but this was the one thing I hated them for. Years later, I'd stay up in the evening because something reminded me of her. And I'd wallow in bitter tears, thinking that if my parents had listened to me, she'd be here, sleeping curled up against my chest. I never told anyone about this. My parents made mistakes and learned from them, and my words should have no impact other than hurting them. It certainly wouldn't bring her back. Anyway, I'm using past tense because my cat reappeared last year and is now back with me in my own apartment instead of my parents' house. She's pretty much the same cat, still trying to crawl under my skin. She's healthy with not a scratch on her, and absolutely no intention of going back outside. Seriously, she can barely stand being in my bedroom if I, very slightly, I'm not risking this, open my window. I never quite realized how much her disappearance hurt me until that knot of pain was unbound. I no longer resent my parents for this, so there is even less of a point of talking to them about it, especially since they are careful to keep their cats inside now. Story 29. About 2 decades ago, I was with an oil field company that was getting bought out. Everyone had to line up in order to get their NDA and severance packages. They put me last and said I'd be the only person in my company staying on. They wanted me to take care of a huge office building, warehouse, shop, fleet yard, fabrication facility with 100 shipping containers full of stuff. Absolutely not what I was hired for, but I said sure. 3 months go by. The central office is now 1,000 miles away, and it seemed I was forgotten. By that point, I'm hitting golf balls off the top of one of the buildings in the middle of the day. The place was big enough for 1,000 people and just a little old me left. I got a phone call and was told nobody knows what's out there. We have 0 records or asset lists. Can you take a couple hours and put something together? This place had 39 track hoes, 700 fleet vehicles, tool trucks, bulldozers, graders, tractor trailers, you name it. Warehouses of tools still in boxes. I ask, what do you think is out here? And the big head honcho says, as far as I know, just an empty office building. It doesn't matter. It's all going to auction. We don't need any of it. I ended up babysitting that place for over a year. During that period, I took 2 ladders and a table saw. That's it. The rest I logged. I found out a couple of years later, some of the top managers took trucks, bobcats, and one guy loaded up a new track hoe on a new semi with a trailer and drove off. He still has it. And that was the day after the layoffs. They knew the company had no idea what was there. That's got to be worth over $1 million. It's just wild. I still think about it, what I could have done if I had the guts, but I really was terrified of getting caught. Story 30. There was a kid in my middle school who was picked on a lot by others in his grade, and he would use that built-up anger on pestering people a grade below him, which included me. I knew deep down he was a good guy, so I tried to not let it affect me because I saw how nasty people were to him. One night, he posted on Facebook a really worrisome message about missing everyone and saying goodbye. I called the principal immediately. He was a family friend, and I told him about it. He ended up calling the police with a care concern, and the next day, I went on Facebook to see the guy post, "Thank you to whoever my guardian angel is that called this in. You saved my life." I think about him from time to time and hope he's doing well. Please always check on people. Life is worth living. Story 31. My husband has ALS. He was diagnosed 2.5 years ago and can no longer stand up or walk and has significant speech and arm-hand movement loss. I'm his full-time caregiver, and he's only 40. He's in good spirits mostly, but I know it, of course, gets him down that he can't do much of anything himself and that I have to do so much. Sometimes I ask him for help when I don't need it. I work from home and will come out and run math questions by him or ask if I have the right definition for a word, etc. Any question that can be a yes or a no from him due to his lack of speech. It's all questions I either absolutely know or can easily figure out, but he always looks happy when I need him for something. Story 32. When I got fired from my door-to-door sales job about 5 years back, I was fired with 2 other people at the same time. Just layoffs because they thought we were the people underperforming the most. We weren't, but that's some other BS. One was just some 19-year-old kid, but the other was a guy a bit older than me who I really respected. Getting fired already sucks, but they did it right before frickin' Christmas, and the guy I respected had a frickin' 4-year-old daughter. So when we got our final checks, I signed mine over to him without hesitation and went on about my business. I wanted that guy to feel like, despite how evil that company and the people there were, that there is good in the world. I didn't ask for any payment back, and I haven't really spoken to the guy since. I don't really share the story because it feels really self-indulgent if I did. Like, hey, look at how good of a person I am. And, that would kind of diminish the act entirely. It's just something I like to think about when craps go left for me. If the world is ever super crappy and I feel down about myself, I like to remember that I was the guy that did that. Story 33. I'm the one who called the police when my neighbor's ex tried to run her over outside our apartment. It was like 3 a.m. or something, and I woke up to the sound of her screaming. I go to the window in time to see him drag her out of her car, hit her, and try to drive the car over her, but I guess he was too intoxicated to drive a stick shift. The cops got there while he was hurting her because he couldn't run her over. A few days later, I saw her in our stairwell, and we greeted each other like usual, despite her obvious injuries. Then she asked me if any noise had woken me up a few nights previously. I lied and said I slept like a log all weekend, best sleep ever, and she looked relieved, then mentioned her ex had moved out for good. Years later, we were having a night out, and she told a story of what happened from her perspective, how ashamed she'd been of being engaged to a cruel person, how she thought she was going to pass away in our parking lot, and then suddenly that schmuck was on the hood of the car in handcuffs, and she was on her way to the hospital, how that divine intervention helped her make a clean break from him finally. I still didn't tell her it was me who'd called. She's thriving and happy now, and if believing the universe was telling her to survive is what helps her, so be it. Story 34. I was 15. I was in St. Pete Beach, Florida on vacation with my family, and as a 15-year-old, I was too cool to be with or around my family. I was hanging out at the rocks down the beach and saw something shiny in the sand, reached down and found a diamond ring and pocketed it without thinking. A few hours later, I was walking the beach the same way and saw this guy losing his crap, crying, freaking out, and just sad, pacing around the rocks and looking down into the sand. He kept saying how stupid he was over and over for not realizing it was in his pocket. I put two and two together in my head, figured he went swimming with the ring or something and it fell out of his pocket. I still had it in my pocket, so I tossed it down and kind of kicked some sand on it and bent down to find it. The guy completely lost it. He was so happy, he was shaking and kept saying thank you over and over. He was like 10 years older than me and a pretty muscular dude, so I was kind of intimidated at first. I always hope he is happily married. Story 35. Not so much that I'm taking it to the grave, but that nobody believes me when I tell them. So when I was 5, I just started kindergarten, and on our first day, we got to have lunch in the lunchroom. I thought it was going to be a regular thing, but my mom wouldn't give me money for it, so next morning I took what I thought was $1 out of my mom's purse to pay for lunch. Lunch never came. We did half days. I lost $1. The next night, my parents were fighting. My dad was calling my mom all sorts of names, throwing crap, threatening her, etc., because he was convinced she did something shady with a $100 bill that was in her purse the day before. I tried to tell them what happened, but he threatened to hit me if I didn't shut up. He insisted for years she bought something expensive, gambled it, or bought substances. He was always fixated on substances despite zero evidence that she ever did any. I tried telling him multiple times over the years that it was me. I mistook the $100 for a $1 bill and I lost it. He refuses to believe me. He insists she bought substances. He still brings it up for no reason. My mom doesn't believe it either and thinks someone pickpocketed her. Story 36. My husband still thinks that his proposal totally surprised me and that I had no idea it was coming, but I knew. No one had spilled the beans or anything. I just deduced it from a number of abnormal events leading up to it, and we were taking a vacation to a bucket list spot that weekend. It was still epic and so incredible that secretly knowing in advance didn't take a single thing away from that moment for me. I was also engaged once before that to a total schmuck, I might add, and I'm grateful every day that I didn't marry that evil schmuck. He also tried to surprise propose, but I was the only person in the relationship that did anything useful in our household, which included checking and opening our mail so that I could ensure bills were paid on time and appointments were scheduled and such. One day, a letter arrived for him from a jeweler. I assumed it was junk mail and opened it. For the record, I always opened all of his mail because he couldn't be bothered to complete even that simple task. The envelope contained an appraisal for what was obviously an engagement ring, complete with detailed pictures of the ring included on the quote. I took it to the jeweler and asked him to resend it so that he wouldn't be deflated by the ruined surprise, and I've never told him about any of it. And if any of these stories got to YouTube, here's more for you. YouTube thinks we're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.